Morning, folk. I'm here to show you how I make my bread. I call it hay bread because one of the main components in it is hay or chaff from oats. The other bulky component is actually jumbo oats itself. I'm using hay because I want a very open textured, and I want a bread with lots of roughage. Most bread, even boutique health breads, have less than 10% fibre, and I'm really not sure of the amount of fibre of this, but I suspect it's probably between 20-30%. I can't be sure, but I think it'll be fairly evident that this is a high fibre bread. I'm using a waste product. It's very cheap. I bought a bale, 22 kilograms for £6, $9. It's very high in fibre. It's low in starch and sugar, of course, nothing in it. It's good for roughage. It's good as a pre-biotic. And making the bread itself is very easy. There's no need to knead. In terms of proving, it's very much an optional thing. Leave it a little bit after they make the mix. It starts to rise, or you can just put it into the microwave and it'll go straight up. Very low power usage in the microwave. The actual bread itself cuts and cuts well, and very definitely freezes it without any deleterious effect. And it's really, really nice. You can eat it per se, or pop it in toaster. Not to toast it, but a couple of minutes in the toaster. It's a very moist bread, so it won't burn. The other thing about it, being made in the microwave, the crust, very much a crust, but it's not a burnt crust, so there's no acrylamide. And that cancer-producing substance that is produced on the bread, which is made in ovens, classical ovens, just isn't present. As I say, it cuts well and it preserves well, and I think we'll go now to showing you some of the ingredients and just how I put it together. Thank you. Hello folks, this is my dining room. Believe it or not, somewhere to put this rather large bale of hay chaff. It's I bought it from a horse feed dealer. It's been, the dust in it's been extracted, and it's a very healthy product for horses, and a very clean product for, I suppose, really fancy horses like race horses. Anyway, this is it. I'm collecting some now, and what I'll need for the bread is literally 100 grams, and it is amazingly light, and thus quite voluminous. So you can sense that I'm having to get quite a lot of it to put into a coffee mill to grind up. This bale is 22 kilograms, and it costs very little. It cost about £6. That's about, I suppose, about $8 or $9 in American or Australian, and I'm not sure, probably about the same in euros, probably about €8 or €7. Anyway, enough here for 660 loaves of bread. And that's a lot. Okay, we're going to take this lot, just make sure we've got a bit more, take this lot downstairs and grind it up. And that pretty much is what's going to go into 3 loaves of bread. All right. In the kitchen now, folks, and this is my coffee grinder, and very, common garden coffee grinder. And the only important thing about here is to make sure that this hay is ground up in the coffee grinder, to a fine enough fluff, not to be catch when you're eating it. This has to be very fine, and I'll show you how it goes. And for starters, I'll just do this little bit here now. With all these machines, there's little tricks, and one of them is to make sure that the bits hang over, and that when the cutter goes, that you've got to keep on presenting new hay to it, and right. Shall I start again?
We can start again.
Another way of making sure that the straw gets circulated or becomes circulated through the blades in a fairly uniform fashion is stop-start. And I think probably the other two, it now moves the I'm just going to see and check, push some of that down a little bit. It's worth inspecting it. May need a couple of times to have this, and patently it's not anywhere near finished, so I'll put it back into the working mode. There we go. Now that's really good. Now you can see it's not dust, but on the other hand it's not far from it. And there's no, if I put through there's no spicules of hay to be concerned about. So I'm going to start to measure that now and pop that in to here. And that registers as about 10 grams, a bit under 10 grams. So a little bit of a, this is the most arduous part of making the bread. The rest is easy peasy. So we'll press on. I'm using 100 grams of the strong stone ground wholemeal flour. This is to offer, although it's gluten containing, it's a small amount, and it's offering some leavening to when it reacts with the yeast that I'll be showing you myself using in a few minutes. Morning folks. Again, I thought I'd broach the subject of ingredients, and if we come around here, just got the bulk ingredients, which are going to be the jumbo oats. I've got some coarse brown flour, a kilo of oats, 100 grams of coarse brown flour, and 100 grams of the shredded hay underneath all that lot. And then the other essential things are going to be some yeast. This is sort of just some dried yeast. Going to have some psyllium, on which which will act as a binder. Going to have some baking powder to help stretch the psyllium and a little bit of just a touch of sugar for the yeast to act on. The other things that I have here are really optional. Throw in a handful of oat bran, I've got some dried basil here, this is high potassium salt, or rather low potassium salt, low sodium salt, high potassium, low sodium salt. And what gives the bread a nice flavour is turmeric, and that's the good thing. Any spices you like really, cinnamon, pepper, anything. It's such an easy thing, and the amounts are really just down to yourselves. Okay, and so we'll move on in a minute and show the thing being made. Okay, just adding the bits and pieces, the sugar I mentioned earlier, about a tablespoon, no, not a tablespoon, a teaspoon and a half rather. This is a dried yeast, a little sachet. I don't know how powerful it is, but it seems to work. And putting in some dried basil. As I said, the amount of, just put in, don't measure it, just put in some turmeric. And in the case of salt, I just put in probably about a teaspoon of salt or something like that. Not necessary, just I like a little bit of salt. And as I stress, I use the high potassium, low sodium salt. Okay, so we're going to start stirring this in a second. Just in case there's a bit of an explosive thing when I start bringing the mixer down, I just get some of the stuff through the mix, bring it up, and that's all I do. And I'm going to use this to stir it while it's dry. Now, I'm sure you'll appreciate it'll go absolutely berserk when I turn the machine on. So I've made this little platform to, and I just put this little platform here, around here, and it just acts as a guard while I stir the contents dry. I'm not absolutely sure it's necessary to mix the things dry, but it's what I do. And excuse me. And there we go. I think we might cut that. Hello again. I'm going to add the water directly to the mix. If I had a bigger bowl, I'd stir it up a little bit, but I don't have a bigger bowl, and I'm likely to get it to go over the top. So I'm going to make the mixture wet de novo right from the beginning, and I'm using barely warm water. If water's hot, it causes a problem. It makes the baking soda useless. So that's what I'm doing. So I've put in 1500 mils of water, a litre and a half. Now, I might add, there's no order in which to mix anything. Just throw the things in. I'm adding the psyllium now, and I'm adding 3 heaped teaspoons of psyllium and a couple of heaped teaspoons of baking powder. No order, just stick it in, and as I said before, make sure the mix is not hot, otherwise the baking powder will become useless. I'm just doing this so when I turn it on it doesn't go haywire and splash all over the place. Anyway, there we go. So, making sure it's all mixed. Well, that's that. I think we'll just leave it like that, and just, I've got to grease some dishes, and I'll The dishes I'm using are glass dishes, and I have a silicone rubber dish, and that's pretty much what I'll be using here. And I'll just put a smear of olive oil around there, trying to stay vegan and not use butter. But anyway, just helps the bread separate easily. I'm sure you're familiar with all that sort of stuff, but here we go. Now I'm going to be using the microwave here, and I use the microwave because I really don't want to produce bread with a burnt crust. Acrylamides are deemed to be carcinogenic, and all the beautiful dark black crust that you find on boutique breads really isn't terribly good for you. Very tasty, very nice, lovely crunch. What I'm doing now is producing a crust that isn't burnt, and it's no less a crust, but it's not burnt. It's the same texture and colour as the bread that's on the inside of it. There we go. The other thing about the microwave is, in terms of efficiency and saving energy, I mean, I'm going to be using 10 minutes of microwave I have a 1000-watt microwave. I know it's a little bit bigger than the standard, which is 800, but I'm going to be using that for 10 minutes for each loaf, maybe 12 minutes, but I don't have any. As long as it's over 10 minutes, this bread is well cooked, and it produces a loaf that has a crust, but which isn't burnt, and all I can say, I think you'll find this a very pleasing texture loaf, and I'll show you the texture later when I start to cut it. Okay. Fairly wet mixture, but it all gets absorbed because fibre, of course, is reasonably hydrophilic and pulls water into itself to make obviously less than solid mass, but it becomes bread. Well folks, I've just canted this into the moulds. I'm popping this into the microwave, and we'll give it 10 minutes. Well, I've gone over 10 and a half, but the other two, just put fan oven, this is barely warm, 50 degrees. Just what I call minuscule proving, but I don't think it's necessary. I'm just doing it to give it a bit of a head start, but absolutely unessential. There we are. We'll have a look at this in a minute, and for 10 minutes we'll take the loaves out. With a bit of luck they'll have risen, and you'll see what we're trying to achieve. Well folks, the cooking's done, or the oven bit's done. If we come round to the result, these were equal amounts, pretty much equal amounts. This one's flat, and I think that's because I gave it no time to prove, or I put from the mixing bowl directly into a mould, popped it in the oven. This one was about half an hour in a warm place, and this was about an hour and a half in a warm place, and I think probably I got more leavening if I'd left the whole shebang longer. Anyway, just to show you the result, I'll take a slice of each and just show you. We'd expect this to be more dense, and what I'll do now, now that's the texture of that one, which is fairly dense, but you can see the fine grains through here, the chaff or hay, whatever we want to call it, and we'll move on to the next loaf and show that. And This will expect to be this bit lighter. I'll just show the loaf as it comes out of the mould. Comes out fairly clean. That's just a little bit of olive oil in the mould. So, and you know, it's fairly safe, it hasn't broken, and that's of course because of the psyllium, which is binding it. And here we go. Now we have a look at the two, the textures, pretty much the same, and pop that on there, that on there, and this loaf should be lightest of all, but they feel the same way because there's the same amount of stuff in them. Here we go. Now, there's the two, the texture marginally lighter. I think I did myself a favour with this one, leaving it long, to prove. Perhaps if I'd left it a day, then an element of sourdough, a bit of fermentation would have come in. But it's a very nice bread. What is so good about it, if you put it, I would never toast it, but if you warm it through in a toaster, it's even better than just eating it raw. It's quite a composite bread, but unlike ordinary bread, it doesn't, in your mouth, it doesn't go into a hard blob, or in your gullet, it doesn't feel as though it's sort of a bit like dough being recomposed. Anyway, that's that. What else can I say about it? High in fibre. It's got psyllium, which of course is 80% or 88% fibre. It's got the hay or chaff. It's got oats, the natural fibre in oats, or the jumbo oats. Minute amount of fibre from the whole grain wheat flour, or coarse grained wheat flour, which is 10% of the total. It's got, we put salt in it, we put herbs in it, and of course as raising agents we've used yeast and a bit of baking powder. Not a lot, but some. And what can I say about it? It tastes good. I think it's good for the gut. It's got a lot going for it in terms of fibre, and I can only recommend it to you. I hope you try it yourself. I have to stress the amounts are pretty academic. You know, I'm using a kilo and 10% of extra of flour and 10% extra of the hay. So it's mostly oats with a small amount of flour and 10% of hay, giving it this really speckled appearance. All right, well, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have good luck with it.